When I got stabbed, I had to communicate clearly where I was, what had happened, and so I could, get the help. When I was chasing that man with a gun, again, on the radio, I had to communicate clearly where I was, what was happening, and what was going on, so I could bring in the assets and the resources to support me and help me.
Welcome to Team Talk. John, lovely to have you with us. We're going to be talking about the courage to have really difficult conversations and the benefits of boundaries today. John joins us from Newleaf Academy. We're going to talk about what you offer later on. But let's give people a little teaser. I know you did a warm-up exercise when we were in a room together the other day. Is there anything you could do sitting down?
Sitting down?
Challenge. Sitting down warm-up.
I think, when we first met at that event, I took the room and I had everyone standing up and doing a bit of something. Sitting down, James. Do me a favour, James. Put your hand in the air, please. Can you reach a bit higher?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll ask you the question. Why didn't you reach higher the first time?
That's a great question. Perhaps we're all a bit. Let's be honest. Perhaps we're all a little bit lazy as humans.
What we've all got within us is everyone has got the ability to push that little extra further, that 30%. We've all got 30% within us, okay? And we can always reach higher, yeah? But the question is, why didn't you just give it your all in the first place? It's a bit one of the sort of examples we do at Newleaf Academy for people's mindset. Doesn't matter who you are, yeah? You always hold a little bit back, so always reach that little bit higher. So there we go. Was that good enough for you?
That totally resonates with me because I'm all for
so when you go home tonight, or anyone watching, so when you go home tonight, or anyone watching, just ask your nearest or dearest or a friend to just put their hand in the air. Then see, could you reach a bit higher? Yeah, and why didn't you do that in the first place?
Okay. Hopefully people are going to be trying that across the country today. We'll see what happens. Let us know. We'll come on to the academy a bit later on, but I know you've got quite a bit of an interesting background, John, to talk about in terms of that courage to have difficult conversations. What was your sliding doors moment in life?
My sliding doors moment, as you said, I've had an interesting background. I've been on a journey myself, and I thought my journey was complete until I had, as you say, a sliding doors moment. It all came probably about 4 years ago now, when my wife told me to pack my bags and get out. I used to work hard, and my reward was always to, as a lot of people do at the weekends, was to go out, have a drink and overindulge, because it's that reward mentality, isn't it? I've worked hard, I need to give myself better, thank myself. And for me, I over rewarded myself. It led to me being, losing control a little bit, and it just had an effect. It had a knock-on impact. So where I thought I was doing well, I was actually rewarding myself in the wrong ways. And then I asked myself,
what were you doing? Drinking too much? Or
I had too much to drink. I'm quite an excitable person, as you know, James, as it is.
Yeah. So
when I have a few too many, as they say, it was just just tipped too far. I then had to ask myself the question that I'd lost weight. I thought my mindset was in the right place, but was I fulfilling my purpose? And I wasn't. And I had to really deep dive inside of me, change my direction and what my version of success was. And that was my sliding doors moment, where it's led me to where I am today, speaking to you.
Look, there's going to be loads of stuff, but I guess when we talked before, I think part of your history, if I remember this correctly, is that you're in the police. Now that must have had some interesting challenges with individuals, having some quite difficult conversation. Tell us a bit about your experience there that may help other people to have challenging conversations that they need to have.
So as you say, I was in the Metropolitan Police for about 10 to 11 years. It was 11 years approaching, and I'd worked my way, and I was working in an offender management unit, and dealing with the Northwest's most violent and prolific criminals. And it's talking to people that have had the same conversations over and over again. And it's what's called the revolving door syndrome.
Right.
So
Tell us more.
my job was to go in and try and change the patterns and the patterns of behaviour and habits of people that, you know, were lifelong criminals, and whatever ever had happened before that wasn't working. So to go in and then be seen as, you know, telling the same conversation over and over again, it was difficult, not only for me, but having to think about the person on the other side receiving it.
I mean, I mean, let's start with you, because I've watched TV, but I've got no actual real idea of what it's like to go in and speak to a group of offenders. I guess if you're having a conversation over and over again, your mindset's got to be in the right place, isn't it? Otherwise, you know, it would be easy for somebody to make the assumptions. There's nothing I can say to change this. But how do you get yourself in the space for those conversations, John?
Preparation's key, James. It's understanding and knowing your audience and gathering all the information and the intelligence beforehand before you walk in to have that conversation. What has gone on before? What has brought them to this point? What has been tried? What's been tested? And what's worked? What hasn't worked? So then that would set out the tone of my conversation to go in and try and do something different. Because they say, don't they, you know, if you don't change it, nothing changes. If it stays the same, it stays the same. You've got to try different approaches and different angles to see what, you know, it's that whole adage, isn't it? They say, long, you know, you kiss enough frogs, you'll kiss the prince. It was a bit like that in the police with the offender management. It was a very difficult task to keep on going in and having that conversation and stuff, but just trying different tweaks each time.
I'm assuming it's a lot easier if you believe change is possible for them, isn't it? Probably put another way, really difficult if you were going and think, I'll never change these people. So how do you have to get that belief? Do you have to give them a certain amount of trust?
You need to listen to them. Listen. You know, the biggest thing in change or leading, or, you know, someone that's, you know, on hard times, nobody likes to be spoken to or at. You need to open up that room and create a sense and environment of empowerment to the person who is probably feels like they're at their lowest ebb. You know, they're not doing what they want to do because there's things in their way. And there's nothing worse than someone's just constantly go, you need to do this, stop doing this, stop doing this. You need to stop, you need to listen to what is actually holding that person back from creating and achieving that change. And, you know, a lot of when my time in policing, we go back to that, we say with that offender management programs and a revolving door syndrome, I used to just give the opportunity to just sit there in silence and say, this is your moment. No one's listened to you, have they? Really? They're like, no. Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me what I need to do to help you. And a lot of those conversations, were the same. And it was difficult because you would see the same customers, as you would say, or the same faces appearing, but you've got to remain resilient. When you apply those tactics and you understand that not everyone will change straight away, resilience, patience, and just showing that you're there to help and listen. Listening is so important. I can't stress that enough.
Did you find that it took time to sort of break down from the, I don't know, maybe you, I'm just trying to put myself in the mind of the person you're sitting in front of. You know, did they give you some sort of nonchalant answers initially? Do you have to sort of break through that and to get to something more meaningful?
James, people will generally tell you what you want to hear. So you will listen, and then once you've listened to the information, or the intelligence, as they used to say back then, you know, information, intelligence, gathered it all, it's from that you would then direct your questions. Yeah. And sometimes just being honest and direct and saying, you know, you're just telling me what I want to hear. Be completely honest with me. Do you want to change? Do you want to work with me? So that we're not wasting each other's time. And, you know, once you had a direct, and they'd say, well, no one's really asked me that before. that I don't want to waste your time. If you don't want to change, you want to continue this life, and that's great. But you have to understand, moving forward, there will be some boundaries and there will be some expectations, and then that is where the flip will come in terms of the change happening without them realizing. Don't they say that sometimes, not always, you've got to be cruel to be kind?
Yeah, certainly being, almost kindness, telling the truth is almost kindness in itself. I think, Kim Scott writes about that in her book Radical Candor, and I think it's a really important point that you bring up, John, because many bosses are actually afraid to have those direct conversations to address the real elephant in the room. So they either skirt around them or they avoid them. What advice would you give people who are doing that?
Again, we're still touching on my policing experience and my policing days, every engagement, every interaction is an opportunity. It is an opportunity. Every day we wake up, take our first breath, we go out there, it's the opportunity to make a difference and an impact. So in policing, they had an old principle that every contact leaves a trace. Every contact. And
Okay.
So if I touch this, if I touch this behind me here now, I've left a trace. I've contacted it. I could come back in a week's time, my fingerprints will still be on that board, and that board will have known that I've touched it. A bit like when I have those conversations with the offenders, or we're looking at now in a workforce environment. The conversation that you have and that you listen to might not have that impact straight away, but it will leave a trace. And it will leave them thinking when they go away about, what they could do or what they shouldn't do moving forward.
That's really interesting, because sometimes in a conversation, people almost expect an immediate response. But first of all, not everyone's different. Some people they've either got an ego involved, which I can imagine is the case in some of those offenders, or they're actually just the kind of individual who likes to go away and think about stuff. So actually part of your job might be just planting a seed for them to go and mull over.
Going back to your question originally, what advice would I give? I'd say embrace it. It's an opportunity, okay? And what is the worst that can happen in that moment of honesty or a difficult conversation? You can learn that it went well, or you can learn that it didn't go so well, and what can I do differently the next time? We never lose. Something we talk about in the Newleaf Academy, we have our check-ins and stuff, is we never lose. Everything that we do is a lesson, and we learn.
Okay.
We always learn. I coach my boys under 8s team and football team, and I say,
nice.
Did we win or lose today? And they all shout, no. We learn. Yeah. So yeah, going back to
Do they shout that, John? Do they shout that when they win as well?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I mind, things that I let you go. Did we win or lose today? No, we learn. Okay. So who's the winner? Football's the winner. So it's just that mindset change. It's the same.
Do they always say that, even if they've won?
Yeah.
Are they not to go?
No, football's the winner, James. Football's always the winner. It's that, because what does football represent? Environment, community, teamwork, learning.
Nice.
Yeah. We never win or lose, we learn. And, going a bit off random here now, and, it's about getting those thoughts in your head from a young age. So every night I put my boy to bed, we have this saying. I'll stand by the door and I'll say, hard work. And he'll say, beats talent. And I'll say, always be. And then he'll go, the hardest worker on the pitch. And then I'll leave it a moment and I'll say, and he'll go, in the classroom. So, it's just getting into the mindset of the individuals that you're working with, whether it be your own family, offenders, children on football teams. It's about how best can you deliver your message in a fun way, in an honest way. What you have to understand is that whoever you're trying to have an honest conversation with and set boundaries and expectations, Can't deliver it in the same way all of the time. You've got to understand your audience, whether it's my 8-year-old child and his friends, whether it's an offender, or whether it's, your partner or your relationships. We're all different and we all have to be treated differently. This understanding,
yeah,
is that best done by a quote or a saying? Is it best done by leading by example? Yeah, as leaders. Never ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself, James, they always say. And that is so true, because they'll never follow you into battle. So, yeah, just be honest with people and gather the information, gather the intelligence, and come up with a honest and realistic plan.
We've got a real insight into, John,
Yeah.
Dad, football coach, ex policeman. It's a beautiful story telling itself. Thank you.
I've got so many hats,
One of the things, it might be a bit of a cliche, but I can imagine that you've had some really kind of hard scenarios, yeah, where tension is really rife. I don't know whether people are shouting or fighting or really tense scenarios in your life. How do you break that down? How do you go from there to bring that to a sensible conversation?
When you say it like that, James, and I think back and, I'm 42, believe it or not, anyone watching, I'd like to, 42 years old, and I have had, a lot of experience. Life is all about experiences, and I believe obtaining experiences and giving back. And this is where I'm at a moment in my life now that I take everything that I've learned and I want to give back. I've been stabbed. I've tackled a man with a gun, then chased him, thrown the gun, and we ended up getting him and arresting him. All of these scenarios. Like I said, I had my sliding doors moment with, close to home, more personal. The one thing that always jumps out is communication, being clear, in those moments. When I got stabbed, I had to communicate clearly where I was, what had happened, and so I could, get the help. When I was chasing that man with a gun, again, on the radio, I had to communicate clearly where I was, what was happening, and what was going on, so I could bring in the assets and the resources to support me and help me.
Absolutely, but yeah, but obviously you've been police trained, whatever that encompasses. So you've had some training as to how to deal with those situations. I guess most people in a necessarily a stabbing or something, but in a tense work scenario, say, they'd probably go into fight, flight, or fright mode, wouldn't they? So how
Yeah.
do you stop yourself going into that kind of mode?
Fight, flight, or freeze.
Freeze, yeah, thank you for the correction.
Or the common ones. That's all right. Everyone always forgets the third. You have to understand your environment, whenever you're going in to deal with something. Are you suggesting this from a workplace point of view now, James?
Yeah, because hopefully not many leaders and managers are going to have to deal with stabbings and the like, yeah? But they might be involved in a very tense shouting match, or a meeting might just get out of hand. Hopefully that's as far as they might experience if they were unlucky. And I don't know, your inclinations, our natural human inclinations, might be to run away or shout at the room. How would you deal with it?
It depends very much on the scenario, the situation. If you know that you're going into a hostile environment, could be a meeting, a one-to-one, or a group, you need to understand the information beforehand, and what you need to understand what you want to achieve. What do I want to achieve? What do I want to gain? Not what do I want to lose? Now, sometimes in a one-to-one, and this will bring us back to the topic of this conversation, clear expectations and boundaries need to be set. Very clear.
So this might sound like a stupidly obvious question, John, but what's the difference between what I want to gain and what I want to lose from your perspective going into that conversation?
What you want to gain is a positive outcome. What you don't want to lose is a step back. You don't want to come out of that meeting a step back. So the key tip that I would give that in having those difficult conversations, and if you're starting to lose the interaction, is obviously don't go alone. Have HR with you or someone with you that alongside. The one thing which we always say is never ever react on emotion. Now, emotions are powerful, and we all have them, James. I don't care who anyone is. You go into a confrontational, difficult conversation with someone, and you're going to get tense. You could get overjoyed. You could get angry, happy, sad, based on whatever the topic of conversation is. But if you allow that emotion to control you and react in it, especially anger, then once you've lost control, lost control. You say that again, I say to people, I say never react on emotion, because once you've lost control, you've lost control. So always use the emotions to your advantage. And then this is the moment where you take time to really listen. I think I might have said this to you when we first met. It's very difficult to just not talk and sit still and listen. It's really it's an art, it's a skill.
It was a great illustration. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
That was a genuine exercise. Thank you, John. Not a glitch in the video.
No, I would challenge anyone that is a leader that is going to have those difficult conversations, that when you go in and you address the topic and you've got the boundaries and expectations in your mind, raise while you're there to speak, then I would challenge you to allow the other party to express everything, because that is your opportunity.
Yeah,
that is your opportunity to gather all the information, and that will strengthen your position.
What exactly do you do? Just going back slightly, have you got any magic trick or tip that you use that stops you going into the emotion? Because that's a natural human reaction, yeah? That's going to happen anyway. So something's got to happen for you to go, hang on, John, don't go there, go here. How do you do that?
So if you're in the moment and you feel like you're going to lose control, or your emotions are rising and you're feeling upset, so the thing that I will do in a confrontational situation, like a front row of a public order situation, or if I'm having a difficult conversation with a client for Newleaf Academy, or with a coach, or with my partner, it's some people, their legs will shake, or you can see it written in their faces, can't you, that they're gonna go. I employ a tactic of finger on thumb.
Okay.
And channel your emotion and squeeze it. Squeeze the finger and thumb together. Practice that beforehand, and then when you feel that sensation of your thumb and your finger squeezing together in that moment, that is you telling yourself to remain in control. You see, everyone can see your legs shaking, everyone can see your eyes going. Not many people will see your finger on thumb. And just, and it's a good way then, if you're talking, and we all need to express and communicate in certain ways. Finger on thumb, push hard.
It's amazing how powerful those little techniques can be, and it's just a split second, isn't it, or a couple of seconds to allow your brain to go, hang on, don't go crazy, don't emotionally overact, go into that powerful, I don't know, my summary of what you described there, that powerful mode of curiosity, and ask them a load of questions and explore their point of view.
Because a deep breath in a conversation that's getting heated, when somebody goes, that's just going to communicate to the other party that I'm getting to you, and I'm going to keep on going.
Yeah.
Whereas that squeeze and then that release is almost like your deep breath. Breath in, release, and just refocus, reset, readjust, remain in control.
Yeah, it's almost, I don't know, maybe it's just my warped mind, but that little squeeze is almost your tiny little punch your emotion would like to give them then. You're, of course, restraining yourself, but rather than just restraining yourself, you've actually acted it out in a tiny, small way that they can't see it. So you've almost released and dissipated their energy so you can then move on.
It's exactly that, James. I didn't explain. I wanted you to pick up on it, but you squeeze all of that tension and energy into your finger and thumb instead of visually playing it out with a big deep breath. Your legs shake, everything else, your head and stuff moving, or looking for the exit, or squeeze.
Yeah,
Right, okay, right, reset, refocus, readjust, listen.
love it. Love that really simple technique. Anyone could do that anytime, anywhere. I won't say any more. I'll sort of sound like an old martini advert. But I guess the important thing is if you're not doing that, that, let's call it negative energy, is going to go somewhere and it's probably going to stay within you, and that will block you being curious and asking the questions that is the important part of what you were telling us about.
Yeah, when you go into, it's a technique you can apply when you know that you're going into an environment which is going to be difficult, and you think at some point here it's going to really set me off, or I'm going to go off key. Just have the finger on the thumb ready.
This next question is a bit of a, sometimes you can't dress it up a difficult conversation as not a difficult conversation. So there's a level within that. But I guess your view as you go in, yeah, probably back to your earlier point of, well, what's your objective here? That can be very different, can't it? Because you could go in saying, hang on, I'm going into a really difficult conversation here. I need to fight and win my battle. Or it could be, oh, I totally disagree with that person. Let me go and explore why they've got a different perspective. It's a totally different mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would always say be open-minded before you make your final decision. Gather all the information possible and allow the other person to have their say on on the topic that you've raised in this difficult conversation, because there may be something that you have overlooked or something that you're not aware of that has led to this conversation that you need to have, or behavior that they've shown. And from a work environment, it might be that this isn't, it's not underperforming, but is there a well-being factor here that I need to address and support with? And
Yeah,
you can
good
come
point.
out of this conversation actually with a completely different outcome that you expected, which will actually be better than the one you wanted, because you will then go into support mode and showing that
Great.
person
Yeah, really
that,
good point.
yes, I am your leader, yeah, but I'm listening to you. We all want to be heard. People make noise, and sometimes people can hear, but they never truly listen, James.
It's an important skill. We can all improve our listening, can't we? In myself, very much included within that. Oh, we mentioned the importance of 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 expectations and boundaries, and I guess ultimately they can reduce the amount of conflict kind of conversations you have. What's your take on why setting these is so important?
When we were at school, James, when we were younger, we all had rules that we had to follow. We had to be at school at a certain time. You had your break time at a certain time. You had to wear a certain uniform, and they were called rules. And people used to stick to them or break them. Now, another way to describe the word rules could be boundaries and expectations. Now, as adults in the workplace, I'm not saying like all workplaces are like schools, you know, if you then, people you hear and say, oh, he's treating me like a kid. It's like being back at school. Yeah. It's because a leader or a boss might have gone, right, okay, here are the rules. Listen to my rules. And if you break the rules, then this is what's going to happen. And what do people do? They try to push your boundaries. Yeah. That's the rules. Another word for rules is boundaries. So let's flip this. School, children, we get the rules, and you'll either get a good teacher or a bad teacher, a good leader or a bad leader. Yeah, you could argue. And in that environment at school, when you leave school, you then step into the workplace. And, we all remember a good teacher and how they inspired you and set you off on the path that you became. Sometimes when we leave school, we don't have any more teachers, do we? And people step out They're let loose on their own, and there's no rules, there's no good teachers. So why don't we change the teacher and the rules to leaders with expectations and boundaries? And it's how you then deliver that message. We don't want to treat people like kids. That's not where we're going with this. But children love to know where they stand. They love to know their boundaries and your expectations. And if you can use that sort of philosophy and bring it into the workplace.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because actually I'd go a stage further, because I totally agree with you. And so, well, actually, everyone likes to know where they stay. Then 100%. They know, don't they? There's nothing uncertain, and we're worried. We're scared of uncertainty.
So at school, these are the rules. If you break them, you're in detention. But in the workplace, we move forward. It only helps you as a leader that if you set out the boundaries, expectations, I'm here to try and lead you and inspire you. But if you don't meet my expectations, if you cross the boundaries, then this could be the next steps.
Yeah. But it could also be immensely positive, couldn't it? I mean, I don't know, you're a football coach, so as well, if you didn't have any rules in football, okay, in one hand it could just be a kickabout practice for a bit of fun, but I'm talking for a proper match between a couple of sides that were competing, it wouldn't work, would it? Because you wouldn't know how to win,
and it would just break into chaos.
Yeah. And the other side, I think there's a really positive side here, because for a lot of people, I don't know, if you played word association and you mentioned rules, as you would suggest, they might say school, or the police, or a derogatory term for the police, or something like this. I'm just winding you up, John. I know you can take it. Yeah, so there might be a negative association with the word rules, and I love the fact that you've reframed it into expectation, because that is a massively positive. And I don't know if you experience this, but I find quite a lot of leaders I work with, because they are working with other highly intelligent humans, they make loads of assumptions constantly. We all do as human; it's part of how our brains need to operate. But then, because they make assumptions, they don't necessarily set those expectations of what good looks like, or fantastic looks like, or absolutely amazing looks like.
Yeah,
do you
100%.
Find that?
Yeah, and I think, look, what you're leaning towards there is that you set the expectations and the boundaries, or rules is taken another way. But then you as a leader, yeah, a bit like your teacher, you are a role model. You are an inspiration, yeah, to your workforce. I said earlier in our chat, never ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do yourself, yeah. And a bit like with police or football or Newleaf Academy, you need to lead from the front and show that this can be done. Otherwise, people will just lose faith, and that's when the boundaries can be crossed.
You got any other practical tips you'd give to leaders in terms of setting those expectations and/or boundaries?
In terms of the rules, yeah. So look, not rules, boundaries and expectations.
Yeah.
The thing that I found something that I brought along today when I went around to my mum's house the other day. Something that really interests me. I don't know if you can see it on there.
I can't see it, but maybe you can tell us.
Hold it to the camera. It says speech, and it's from John's own head boy speech, which helped him gain the head boy when I was younger at sixth form.
Okay.
And it's very interesting in terms of, like, when you say what tips could help you, like, preparing, but writing things down, James. Writing things down and following it through afterwards in writing is important, because you can say something, as communication, like a verbal, but good or bad this is, you need to follow it through in writing. Write to them. Have the conversation first, then explain, well, I'm going to follow this through in writing, just so we're clear and you know. Because then when you come back to remind that person about the conversation that you had, they will say, well, I don't remember that. You never said that, And everything that you do with the other party in the conversation you have needs to be agreed. Because if they don't agree with what you've then followed up in writing, then you need to have a further difficult conversation.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
continue from there. And why I bring it back to this, James, in preparation for this today is, I think deeply about leadership. I'm very passionate about it. Is it nature versus nurture? Do you learn from the worst? Or, they say you learn from the worst managers, learn what not to do. But I had a deep think about my own journey, went back and I pulled out my old head boy speech. An old bit of paper there, you can see there, written in fountain pen there, you can see. I'll just read.
Give
I'll
us a
read you
line.
a bit
Go on,
from
John.
it.
Give us a line.
It's very interesting in terms of the journey and what we've spoken about today and what, again, at Newleaf Academy. I've written here, so I've put a lot of thought into deciding what qualities does a head boy need. The following came to mind. The following came to mind immediately. Number one, leadership. This, I feel, is my strongest asset as I've gained experience, which we spoke about at the beginning, experiences, in being captain of many sports teams throughout the past 5 years. This led from me being captain of the county basketball team to coaching younger children in years below me. And when I read this back, I was almost amazed, James, that it's like, it got me onto nature versus nurture. Was this within me from a young age, or did I learn it over time?
Absolutely.
I've gone on to write here the next part. This was highly satisfying and helped me to develop as a leader. What I gained from this helped me in what I feel is the next most important quality, communication. I had to develop my personal skills to communicate better to younger children, which at times was very hard and testing, as younger children can get a bit carried away sometimes. Communicating with people has never been hard for me, as I like to let people know that change is possible. And this is written down in here and it's, I went off my own journey, and this speech helped me achieve those votes to get that head boy nomination and place. And I remember at the time, some of the teachers, even now my mum says to me, she goes, that was probably your greatest success in what you did there. Because I had teachers asking me, did your parents write that speech for you, or did you write it? I said, no, I wrote it. And I remember it was my biggest lesson. I still look at it now in terms of preparation, because there was 4 other people that went up for the speech against me, James. And it was very clear that they hadn't written it down, they hadn't prepared before they went into presenting. We then presented to the rest, that was to our peers in the form. We then went on to present to the rest of the school. And have a guess what? I'm proud that they learned from me and they prepared for the next speech. So I was even, leading by example then. So I just wanted to bring that along as a surprise, but it was amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing that and bringing.
The key things is, leadership, communication. They're the two that go hand in hand. And going back to what you were saying in terms of what tip would you give, is communicate verbally, but always follow that up in writing. Everyone is clear about the communication you've had. And if it's not agreed, and they don't agree, then the difficult conversation, you've got to have the courage to give them the honest truths and follow that forward.
I suppose you haven't got that in a frame, John. Have you just found it recently?
It was in I know I've always had it. I'm a little bit upset, James, if I'm honest, because I've got page 1, 2, and then it goes to 5. So we've lost the middle page. Because then it goes on to say at the bottom, which I've lost the next page, but I know what it said. It said, good relationships is so important. In the position I'm going for, and then I don't know what the next bit says, but I'd imagine what I wrote down was that if I do not, establish and form good relationships within the position of a head boy as a leader of what I'm doing, then I'm not going to be respected. I'm not going to be able to fulfill and do what I need to do in that position.
I reckon you knew back then. I don't know what it was, like 25 years ago or something around that.
Yeah.
You knew this was coming, didn't you? This interview. There you go. Already, yeah. It was already just for today. Thank you, John. That was an amazing share, and
thank my mum. She's the one who wrote it on there. Look, she's kept it there. And she filed it away. She
Yeah,
pulled the rug out and
what's your
had me.
mum's name?
Kathy.
Kathleen. Thank you very much indeed, Kathy. And yeah, one more person watching this video as well. Your mum will watch it now as well as all of the
Well, she'll have to now. I'll
leaders.
say we'll have to give her a credit note in the marks.
Yeah, given that she's mentioned in it now. Fantastic.
Did she nurture or nature that? That's nurture or nature. There we go.
Yeah. Well, the fact that she's kept it says an awful lot. Thank you so much. Now, just very briefly, I'm sure you've applied all these learnings and even more in the Newleaf Academy. Just very briefly, what's the philosophy of the new academy you've set up?
There is a lot of programs or services out there, James, when it comes to transformation. When people think of I need to transform, the first thing people think of is fitness. I want to get fit. I need to get fitter and healthier. And you can go and see a PT in a gym somewhere, and they will hammer you for an hour. They'll tell you to get on the treadmill and run, and then they'll forget about you for the rest of the week. Our philosophy is a little bit back to front. Fitness is the last thing we will consider. We approach it with a mindset first. If this isn't right, then you can't get everything else in order and everyone else around you. Then your wellness, so your sleep, your hydration, things like that. Then your nutrition, and then your fitness. Because if you're not in the right frame of mind, then you're not going to eat right, you're not going to train right, and you're not going to set the right goals in order for you to achieve that transformational success you're looking for. And we will always start with deep diving and asking people, certain questions around what is your purpose? So we really home in on that. And it will amaze you, James, the amount of people that, successful people that I've worked with, and when you say to them, what is your purpose? And they'll look and they'll go, well, it's, and I'll say, I'll stop you there. Because if you're not able to tell me directly from the question, then you don't know what your purpose is. You have to think about it. So we really get people to understand their purpose, their blueprint. And then we set the plans around their purpose. And we create things, and then we go into session 2, which is about their values. And we set up a real mindset transformation program, which leads them to understanding what success is. And it's what their version of success is, James, not anyone else's, theirs. And this is all powered by values. We've all got to have values, James, because a life without purpose, values, and understanding what your version of success is means that you're just going around in circles. And I sort of created this concept, the 2190, from my life experiences and my own sliding doors moment, where I had to sit down and sort my blueprint out, understand my purpose, understanding what my values are, which are commitment, consistency, courage, and passion, and what my version of success is.
And my next question, don't you? You know my next question.
Ask what my purpose is.
Absolutely. The telepathy worked.
My purpose is to enhance the lives of everyone that I come into contact with, because that will in turn enhance mine. I'll repeat that again. To enhance the lives of everyone. So my family, my children, my wife, my colleagues, anyone that I come into contact with. Because in turn, if I enhance theirs, it will enhance mine. And that fulfills my purpose of wanting to help people.
That's an amazing way to end. But before we do end, I ask everyone this. What book would you recommend to leaders, managers?
There's a lot of books that I love. An audio book. I'd encourage anyone listening, or you should always never stop learning. And audio books are a great way to do this on your commute or travel, which is something we bring into the Newleaf Academy, part of our plan. So get your earphones, get on audio books, get learning. For me, an audio book that I listened to that really hit home was Eddie Hearn's Relentless.
Okay. What? I don't know. Why are you recommending that? Anything that stands out in it for you?
It's fair to say Eddie Hearn is not everyone's cup of tea, is he? You either love him or perhaps hate him. But for me, I didn't either love or hate him. When I listened to his audio book, I respected him because he was born into a very difficult environment. He had a dad who was very successful and a promoter in his own right. And, Eddie embarked on, working with his dad within the family business. And the amount of challenges and obstacles and how he was perceived, he was off on a difficult footing straight away. And what he did, like me, was he just found his passion and he approached everything in his book. He approached everything with a positive mindset of being relentless and having the passion to not stop until he achieved his goals. And I could really relate to that. And they say, you find your passion, James, you find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. And at the moment in Newleaf Academy, I don't feel like I'm working a day in my life because I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. I truly love it. And when, people hit their goals that we set and they transform, there's a thing you've probably seen on the socials, and this comes from a real, genuine place. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, that is, I can see why you've recommended that book. It totally resonates with not just the story you've told, but the way you come across as well, John. So thank you very much for that. People watch this whenever they like on demand, but we're actually recording it on a Friday. We talked about this session, I believe, last Friday, which is the beginning of the week, right, John?
The week starts on a Friday, James, at Newleaf Academy.
Why is that?
Starts. So look, on a Friday, it is Focus Friday, James. We focus. We set our members, we don't like to call them clients, they are members, part of our community. We set their plans to start on a Friday. Because when people are trying to change or you're on a journey, the weekends can always be a clues in the name.
Yeah. End.
Weak point.
Okay.
Weak point. So if you start your week and your plan on a Friday, you're going into the weekend where there's weaknesses and temptations and obstacles with a mindset of, right, I'm starting Saturday, Sunday, let's get through these 2 days. Then your working week most starts on a Monday. You've already achieved something, haven't you? If you've got through the weekend with commitment and discipline to achieve your goals and stay on plan. And then you can get through the rest of the week.
Days 1 and 2 of the initiative, not the end, whatever it is, 6 and 7. I can count to 7.
The weekend is a weak point because there is so much temptation, there is so much distraction, there is so much opportunity to reward yourself and think, you know what, I'll start Monday. Yeah, let's flip the mindset. Let's focus on a Focus Friday. Get through that weak point of the weekend, and then on Monday you're already...
Fantastic. Love it. Thank you very much indeed, John. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Joe. And I'd like just take a moment to thank you for bringing me on and letting me share that story and answer your questions. It was great meeting you at the event a few weeks back, and I hope we continue to stay in communication.
Absolutely, John. I'm sure we can exchange a few tips. All right, take
Brilliant.
care. Cheers.
All right, thank you, James.
Thank you.